The very essence of the mental game is this. The only reason an event matters is because we make it matter.
Welcome to the Mullins Farrier Podcast, where I will sit down and converse with the superstars, the overachievers, the masters of our craft. Each episode will be a deep dive into their personal philosophies, their habits, the tools they use, and the secrets to not only their success, but overcoming failure as well.
First, find somebody you can mimic, then find somebody you can stand, and then try to focus on one style until you master that style.
So if you say I can't do something, well, you're absolutely right. But if you say you're going to, you're absolutely right with that too.
People say that you shouldn't define yourself by your work. That is not true.
You know what Dave Farley does when he's, lucky enough to be at the World Equestrian Games? I'm watching other people work.
Yeah.
I don't think we do that enough.
This podcast is for all of you out there who share my passion for the job and the desire to always improve. These interviews will put you in touch with the inner workings of the role models we all want to emulate. So let's get to it.
There's only so many hours in a day, and it's a matter of what you do with them.
Welcome, everyone. Just a little shopkeeping before we start. A reminder that the Sean Robertson Clinic will be held this weekend, that being the weekend of August 19th and 20th in Tangent, Oregon. Sean Shrek Robertson was a second-generation farrier and a mentor to many. He was well known for his kindness and generosity, and unfortunately, he was taken from us far too soon. So this clinic is being held for his surviving family. There's a pretty serious lineup of clinicians for this event, including Riley Kirkpatrick, Jacob Manning, and Chris Wycliffe, DVM. I'll share this event on my Facebook page, but you can also contact Quentin Gravel at 1-541-749-0861, or you can email him at gravelfarrier@gmail.com. Today I'm speaking with Chris Diehl, CJF, FE, and AWCF. When I first started this little podcast project of mine, I had more than just a little bit of difficulty getting some people on board with doing an interview. Many didn't know what a podcast was, let alone who I was. So, to this day, I have quite a few unresponded to messages in my outbox requesting an interview. So on the day that someone actually reached out for me to interview them, I knew that the podcast had reached some sort of pinnacle of traction. Chris's opening message to me promised that he had a lot to offer in a conversation for the podcast, and as you will hear, he did not disappoint. To this day, when I'm working on a set of keg shoes with pre-made clips, I hear Chris's voice in my head saying, "I'm pro-clip, I'm just not pro-angle iron." Sometimes controversial, but always calling things as he sees them, I now bring you Chris Diehl. I hope you enjoy the conversation as much as I did. How did you get your start as a farrier?
So when I was 13, my grandpa that had a working cow farm had two old horses out in the pasture, and being a grandpa, the sweet man that he was, gave me one of the horses, and he still paid the bills. But being a working cow farm, we never put money into horses. So he was kind of shocked when I spent my life savings, and I called the vet out and I called the farrier and did all these things that I had learned about in textbooks and what you're supposed to do for horse care. When the vet came out, he was not pleased with the condition of the horse. Nothing was wrong with it, but we weren't going to put any money into horses according to our standards today. But when the farrier came out, he was just this sweet man that really was kind of like, it's going to be okay. We're going to get her trimmed up. Her feet are going to be all right. We'll get you fixed. And I was just naturally drawn to watching him work. And we struck up a conversation, and he told me about how tired he was and how his back hurt and the whole thing. So the next thing I knew, I had him convinced to take me along as a 13-year-old boy as a helper on the weekends if he'd be interested. And that's how it started. It's honest to God's truth. He didn't know me from Adam. He just saw this young farm boy that had a natural interest in the job. And no disrespect to the man, he wasn't a great farrier. He was just a good old horseshoer that came out and just took on, I didn't know at the time that he wasn't so great, but, as time went on. So I got to work with him on weekends whenever he would come and pick me up. Or I would quite literally strap my apron to the handlebars of my bike and I would pedal to his house. I would have to leave like an hour and a half early to do a 10-mile bike ride, go to his house, and then he would take me out. We would toss my bike in the back of his truck, and then he would drop me off at home at the end of the day on Saturdays. And that's how I got started, was just pulling and clinching for this one old cowboy horseshoer. And then as time went on, he started to tell other farriers in the area, like, look, there's this kid. You got to go get him, but he's worth picking up. I guess I had a great work ethic being a farm boy, and I wanted to be in horses. Yeah. I didn't want to be a farmer. So I got this reputation for being like, look, if you want to cut your Saturday short, go pick up this kid and he'll knock it out of the park for you. Don't pay him because he doesn't want pay. He doesn't want nothing. He just wants to learn. And I did that my entire middle school and high school time. Every Saturday, all summer long, whenever I could be in someone's truck. Mom wouldn't even know where I was going. She would hear the screen door slam and I'd go, bye, Mom, I'll be back. And I'd jump in some stranger's truck and I would disappear for 12 hours. So that's really how I got started. And then I left high school early. Some people call it dropping out. I call it quiturating. So I quiturated when I was 16, and I was going to be a farrier. I was 16 years old. I had been apprenticing for 3 years. So I knew it all, man. You bring me any horse in the world, hot, cold corrective, I'm going to do it. And I failed miserably. I fell on my face. I mean, it was embarrassing, justifiably so.
Right. Yeah.
And a couple of years went by, wild years through my high school days. After I quiturated, I joined the military, but I still had this horseshoeing background. It was always in my heart. And even while I was in the military, I would still shoe horses on the weekends when I had time. So I started my own little farrier practice down in Louisiana. Because I had this mindset like, look, I'm 1,000 miles from home. So if I'm going to cripple a bunch of horses, what better place to do it than 1,000 miles away from where I'm going to set up my own practice later on.
Right.
So that's what I did till I was 22. And I went to Danny Ward's horseshoeing school in 2006. And by then I had been apprenticing for a long time. I had been driving nails and shoeing a couple horses. So horseshoeing school for me wasn't so much about getting under horses and getting the basics. I really wanted the education. And I was told by multiple people that you need to go to Danny Ward's because being on the East Coast, if you were going to grow up to be a cold shoer, you went to Danny Ward's because he was going to get you under a lot of horses and you were going to get out and you were going to be able to make a living. That's what Danny Ward's horseshoeing school did for thousands upon thousands of people. He's a great man and a great school. But it wasn't a technical school. It was a get in there, get it done, get out before you die and get paid, get on to the next one.
Right.
Kind of horseshoeing school.
Okay.
Looking back, I'm blessed that I got to experience that because going to a more pronounced school like Cornell or even Mitch Taylor's where you only do a certain number, but you do a higher quality, I don't think that would have helped me. I needed to get under a lot of horses.
Okay.
So after that, I kind of flew under a lucky star. And one of the guys that I apprenticed with was a racetrack farrier. And he had a gig where they had 120 horses in training. And the horses were being shod every 4 weeks. So fresh out of farrier school, I was gifted 1 day a week at this racehorse farm.
Oh, perfect.
Where I got to do 3 full sets every week, no matter what. So no matter how bad life got as a young starting farrier, I had 3 full sets that I was almost contracted to get paid. So from an early age, I had been working on just rank horses with the cowboy farrier. And then I got to work with gaited horses with a guy. I got to work with race horses with a guy, draft horses with a different guy, Danny Ward's horseshoeing school. And then I went on to be a racetrack farrier at a private training farm for 2 years. So from 13 on, I've been around horseshoeing. It's just been something I always knew I was destined to do. So that's kind of how I got the start. So it's pretty cool. It's cool to be 38 years old and to be able to tell people that you have 25 years of experience.
You're right. Yeah.
Because they look at you like, what? how? And I'm like, yeah,
Yeah.
I really do. So
Start doing the math. And wait a sec.
it's the closest thing to being a second generation farrier without being a second generation farrier.
No kidding. Yeah. So in that variety of horses that you got under and had to deal with as a young kid like that, like you must have picked stuff up pretty easily. That's one thing I'm always kind of jealous of people who get to start their careers so much earlier than I did. What were some of the difficulties that you would have had as a kid, like literally a kid working on the horses like that, especially the rank ones?
Yeah, so like right off the bat, I had the owners for eyeballing me like,
Yeah.
there's no way. There's no way you're letting this 13-year-old boy under these horses. But the farriers that I were with, they had enough trust, or the clients had enough trust in them where it was almost like a magic trick. Like, no, watch this. This little kid is gonna get up under there and he's gonna wrench these shoes off and he's gonna do this. And after like this first or second appointment, the clients just kind of accepted me for this young kid.
Right.
They thought it was neat, you know? Yeah, it was definitely, like I didn't do a lot, even at that age. I mostly swept and I was running back and forth. Two of the guys that I worked with didn't use hoof stands. So I learned early on how to do everything on your knee.
Holy jeez.
I just developed those muscles. And, back in the day, yeah, right. 20 some odd years ago, horses were significantly more polite on the hoof stand.
Really?
For guys that never knew a life without a hoof stand, there was a time where the horse would actually not stretch out his leg muscles on the hoof jack. Like, when you put one on the hoof jack and
Yeah.
they immediately just start, and that's usually when they break cross ties and go flying down the barn aisle.
Yeah.
Horses used to actually cradle the farrier to where it was more of a trust thing. You played hell trying to get them to unhook you
Really?
because they didn't want to be stretched and pulled and tugged on. So the old-fashioned farrier position, you were more vertical. Your back was more of an upright position, and you were in more of a traditional squat.
Right.
I think that's why to this day you still see these 90-year-old guys are getting under horses because they never developed the lower back pain that we all have, relying heavily on the hoof jack now because we learned early on, stand up straight, put an arch in your lower back, and the horse will stay with you.
Right.
So
Yeah.
even at a young age, I had learned how to stand more properly than the modern farrier that relies heavily on the hoof jack.
Right.
It's interesting, like at Summit, you can almost see this generational gap. Like there's the 90-year-old man, he's still walking around pretty good. But then there's like this 50-year-old group. They're in a lot of pain because they
Yep.
spent their whole life on the hoof stand.
Right. Yep.
And now you're starting to see like this younger generation are coming in and they're kind of figuring out like, we don't always need the hoof jack here. There are better ways to take care of your body. So it's neat to kind of see that. That's how my brain works when I scan the crowd.
That's funny. I gotta look for that. I was at a clinic one time and a gentleman said that. He said, if you're clinching for a whole bunch of people, like if you're working for a bunch of people and you find your lower back's hurting you, get rid of your stand
Yeah.
and just do it on your legs.
But it's hard because the horses today don't know how to stand politely.
Yeah.
They've never been smacked in the chest when they go to pull backwards and stretch.
Right. Yeah.
25
Yep.
years ago, that wasn't acceptable. So now it's hard for me to abandon the hoof stand because I know the horses have no idea how to stand nicely on my knee.
Right.
It's kind of wild to see how things can change.
No kidding. You must have been out muscled a lot by the horses when you were younger.
I was tall and lanky, and
Oh,
being a
okay.
farm boy, I just kind of had that farmer muscle.
Yep.
So I never really experienced. Most of the guys that I worked with worked on rank horses, so I just assumed that getting flung across the barn aisle was part of the job. So, I just sort of learned like I go flying now.
Yep.
And it's funny because, I keep saying back in the day, but you would get flung, you'd come back in and give the horse a good belly kick, and then you'd get back up under there and you'd hold your ground and the horse would pull and you would pull one way and you put 8 nails in your mouth and this was going to happen. And now, heaven forbid, you've got to call the vet and then sedate them.
Right.
So I'm blessed that even at 38, I can still go, all right, this is going to happen. It's been happening for 25 years and I'm not changing my ways for you.
Right. Right. Wow.
Which has helped me with getting a lot of horses done. And I don't work on bad horses. I will quickly walk away, but sometimes they just need to be sat back on. to understand, hey, this is going to happen.
Yeah, because if they get away with it, then they just figure they've got you beat.
Yeah. I feel like we've lost a lot of grit in the last 20 years in the horseshoeing world.
You think so?
That's something that I've seen is we've gone more of a professional route.
Right.
There's a fine line between being a professional and being a cowboy. And I think sometimes you need that true grit. John Wayne, this is going to happen.
Right.
But it's definitely a balance.
No kidding. Do you think that move towards the professional was a good thing, though, in some ways?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, definitely. Because for the last 20 years, we've been demanding respect. Farriers have been screaming that they demand to be respected the same as a veterinarian. You can't achieve that showing up to a barn in a sleeveless shirt beating on horses.
Right. Yeah.
You're not going to be respected as or revered as a veterinarian on the same level if you don't approach with the same professionalism.
Yep.
That doesn't mean that you shouldn't still have the intestinal fortitude to smack one on the butt, even though you're wearing khakis and a polo shirt. You need to be able to do both.
Okay. That is definitely a fine line too, right? Because there are some
Correct.
places where you'd be fired instantly, and
Yeah.
others where you have the client behind you going, yeah, make sure you reprimand them.
Yeah. I usually will give a horse 3 or 4 chances to be bad, and then I'll tell the owner, like, look, it's coming. So either you do it or I do it, but
Right.
something needs to happen here.
So when you went to ward school and
Mhm.
then graduated from there,
Yep.
what was your next step?
So from there, it was just make a living, obviously. And like I say, I was plating a lot of racehorses.
Okay.
I was just trying to build a book. So hanging cards up. I never went to barns in person and passed out cards. I just relied on the old feed mills and the old tack shops and pray to God that somebody would pick up my card. And once a month, I would drive around and refresh all the ones that were missing. And that's how that went. I was picking up more and more pleasure clients. Unfortunately, my best holder at the racetrack had a stroke. He was 67 at the time, and he was
Oh, wow.
the handler for all the farriers. And this old man, his name was Mr. Ambrose, and he was an old African American man, and he would just kind of shuffle along, and he just knew horses. He grew up on the Pimlico racetrack, betting ponies his whole life. He just knew them, and that man kept many a farrier alive. Whether it was gum chain and breaking light bulbs, shanking them in the mouth, or whether it was just a nice calm touch on a nervous filly. He just knew which ones to get after and which ones to love on. And that man helped me get through a lot of racehorses. But then when he had a stroke, the next day we had a Honduran who was a migrant worker. And I can't make this up, dude. I almost died. So at that point, I had enough pleasure clients where I was like, Mr. Ambrose is gone.
Yeah.
My golden key to staying alive is gone.
Right.
I'm out. So I swore that I would never shoot racehorses again. And then about 6 months later, a different racehorse farm called me. And at this point, I was getting pretty cocky because I was making a living. I said, okay, well, I'm the best farrier Pennsylvania's ever seen. So, no more racehorses for me. And then this farm called and I said, all right, well, I'm going to do the racehorses. I'm going to do it on my terms. I'm not going to whack and tack them anymore. I'm going to do a nice job. Well, dude, I got through that second fire-breathing filly, and I was like, oh, yeah, I remember why we whack and tack these things, because otherwise you die.
Yeah.
So from there, I swore off racehorses, but I learned a lot, and I learned to love the American Thoroughbred. It's one of my favorite horses to work on. A lot of guys don't like them. Thin wall, thin soles. I'll call malarkey on that because I worked on them from babies on up. They have some of the nicest feet you'll ever work on if you're not afraid to leave stuff alone.
Right.
And really lay nails over on a 45 and get them way up the wall where they belong. So without my racehorse experience, I would have never learned to appreciate the American Thoroughbred that I do now.
Right.
But anyway, so after that, one of the things that I wanted to do to set me apart to gain more clients was I thought that if I became certified, that would make me more marketable to the clients. So then I started to go after the certified level because that was something that Danny Ward had always instilled in us was like, learn how to set your stuff apart. And with Danny being such an active member in the AFA, it wasn't that surprising to him to push certification.
Right.
Even though his school didn't really offer it, like it wasn't like Chris's school or Dusty's where they set you up for success to be able to pass the exam. But Danny was always very adamant about make sure that you shoot for, at least CF.
Right.
And then it was awful. That's where I really got kicked in the teeth when I was super, super cocky kid. Yeah, going to the AWCF will kick you in the teeth.
Yep.
There's no way around it. And this was during the dark ages of the CF when none of the examiners knew what the examiner wanted. And it was bad, bad times in the early 2000s. And I drove the whole way to North Carolina, cocky as all get out. And I said, I'm not even bringing my rig. I'm going to borrow somebody else's truck, and I'm going to show you how Chris Diehl is going to shoot horses. And I was quickly stopped, and I wasn't allowed to continue. And they were like, nah. That's a kick. And I think a lot of guys experience that because you're doing a certain thing and you're making a living at it. And then all of a sudden, you've got guys go, I don't know what you thought you were doing, Holmes, but this ain't going to fly.
Yeah, it's not even safe. We have to
Yeah.
stop you.
And I'm like, I'll nail this thing on all day long. What are you talking about? I'll just angle this nail this way, and I'll angle that nail that way. And so I was very, very blessed that I had I believe his name was Bob Smith, and he could tell that I was irate. And he sat down beside me, and he goes, now you can either drive off pissed, or you can hang out for a second, and you'll see what we're all about. And I guess being a military man and being humbled and knowing what it's like to constantly be humbled, I said, you know what? Yeah, I need to hang out. That's when the learning really started. And I cut my shoeing back to 3 days a week, which I wasn't that busy anyway, so it wasn't that hard. And then I restarted my apprenticeship. Even after being a hotshot track farrier and the whole deal, I went back to being an apprentice again. And this time I found somebody that actually owned a forge.
Okay.
That guy's name was Billy Ramju, and he took me under his wing, and he told me flat. He's like, I'm not paying you a penny. I said, I don't want a penny. I just want to learn how to hot fit, and I want to learn how to pass this test. And then through him, I got to meet other guys in Maryland because I live right on the PA Maryland line. I met Mike Poe, who was a journeyman and a young tester at the time. So he took me under his wing. I would drive an hour and a half every once in a while to go work with him. My eyes really were opened up to the AFA, and these dudes just took me in and just cradled me and helped me get back on the straight and narrow. The sky's the limit since.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that was 2009. I took the CF 3 times. Like I said, this was during the dark ages of the AFA, when you used to have to go and like track down the examiner and go, what are you looking for in extended heels? And you would literally go out to the hotel parking lot, and like 5 of you would work together under headlights, and you would make new extended heel shoes. Right. That examiner said it was awful. I mean, it was a bad time, and I'm glad to see the AFA finally got itself straightened out. Exactly 364 days later, after passing my CF, I passed my journeyman.
Oh, wow.
Once I was in test mode, I didn't leave.
Right.
And then 365 days later of passing CF, one day after passing journeyman, I became a provisional tester. I wasn't even a journeyman for 12 hours. The ink wasn't even dry. And a couple of the testers were running late. And Dennis Manning was kind of panicking. And he goes, we need testers. And he scans the crowd and he's like, you're a journeyman. You can test. I'm like, what? And Mike Poe, of all people, go, yeah, it's easy. Anything better than you can do is at least a 7. So that's how it started, man. Yeah. That was 2010. 12 years ago, I became a journeyman.
Cool. So did you carry on with the testing as a provisional tester as well?
I was a tester for a short period, I think 2 to 3 years, to be honest. Because like I say, the AFA went through a really bad patch. And it was all over the CF shoe display because it used to be pass or fail. There wasn't a sliding scale on each individual shoe mod. So it either passed or it didn't. And that was rough. So being a young, passionate tester and being a military man, to me, the AFA guideline book was the written standard. And I read that book to the T, and nothing irked me more as a young tester than when I would go to the certifications and I would have this examiner flying rogue.
Right.
And that just didn't sit well with me. And I got to be honest, there was a couple of altercations, a couple of sworn statements later. I'm no longer a tester.
Oh, so, I see.
I'm not taking credit for it, but I can't help but wonder if the following examiners meeting, things didn't start to change. So shortly after I had written a couple of nasty sworn statements, then the sliding scale was brought to the AFA, which is a good thing. And now they're improving the fit. So I'm not saying that I was part of it, but I might have been the one to strike the match that might have eventually lit the powder keg. I don't know for sure, but
Right.
the timeline might speak otherwise. I'm no longer a tester, just because it always seemed like that whenever there was a certification, it was always a beautiful weekend when the fish were biting.
Okay. Yeah.
So I feel like I paid my dues, and maybe one day I'll get back into it.
Gotcha.
We'll see. I definitely think that it's something that a journeyman should do. It's definitely something that you need to give back, and being a tester is a great way to do that.
Yeah. It's a lot of sacrifice for sure.
Mhm.
Like you said, those particular weekends.
It's always the same weekend. This is beautiful, and you're like, I'm stuck in this indoor eating cold pizza.
But yeah, it is a chance to help a lot of people improve, especially
Yeah.
I didn't start my testing journey until things had improved and it was a very different setup. But I can imagine that would be very difficult if it was always to the discretion of whatever examiner.
Yeah, it was rough. It's definitely rewarding. My good friend Heather Boschman just published her book.
Yeah.
I sent her a message saying congratulations and that I'm proud of her. And she wrote a message back saying, you probably don't remember this, but when I was taking my CF, you were my tester. I guess she was rattling, nerves had her pretty bad. And she goes, you walked up and said, hey, they're watching you because you're about to pass. Gather yourself back up and get through this horse. And she remembered that from 10 plus years ago. So that was super cool. So, I didn't remember it, but I almost teared up, knowing that Heather's just this rock star. And that
Yeah, no
as a
kidding.
tester, she still remembers. And I still remember what the testers told me, little tips and tricks. And
Yeah.
so it's definitely important. And I think that's what makes the AFA so awesome is our certification program, but not just that, the camaraderie that you develop through that program is just it's phenomenal.
Yeah. I've met so many cool people that are involved with that and through the testing. Yeah. Lifelong friendships you get out of that.
Yep. I got to go on a Colorado elk hunt that I would have never been able to experience without the AFA certification and, competitions and meeting farriers throughout the country. So that would have never happened if I would have stayed a plater.
Right. Yeah. Gotcha. So your testing journey continued because you then went for your AW, right?
So before going for AW, I took the forging endorsement.
Okay.
That was around 2014. That was still a young endorsement. That's when the endorsements were kind of new and interesting.
Right.
And the AW had always been a goal once I had learned about it. But I knew that I had to turn in a shoe display. And what's really cool about the AFA is that they offer so many stepping stones to be able to get you through AWCF and ultimately FWCF if you really want it. So I saw the FE as an opportunity to make my AWCF shoe display.
Right.
And get it scored by multiple examiners here in the States. So when I went to turn it in for my AW, I was ahead of the game. I had already had some of the best eyes look at my shoe display.
Right.
That's when I did the FE. That was, like I say, still a very young exam. I think at the time, like me and only 2 other people had it. So there was no one to really confer with.
Right.
It was kind of a wild deal. So that's the only endorsement I have. And then the AW I took in 2016. So 2 years later, but the FE took about 6 to 8 months to get through because you used to have to mail the shoes to the examiner.
Right.
And then he would mail them to another examiner, and then he would mail them to a third examiner, and then you would get them back. And then if one of them failed, you had to do it all over again. So it was, you're counting on the Postal Service to handle your endorsement? No, I'll just drive to Oklahoma. It's safer.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, so I was doing that, and then while I was doing the vice president for the PPFA, the Pennsylvania Farriers Association, and that was just me and one other guy, Randy Ryder. There wasn't even a board; it was just 2 guys and a debit card, and we were the PPFA, and it was great because there's no board of directors. I would call I'd be like, Randy, I'm doing a contest. I need the debit card, and he'd be like, okay, who's the judge? Don't worry about it. Just give me the card. And then he would call me like, hey, dude, it's March. We need to start advertising for June certification. I'm like, okay, do your thing. And so he went off and did certification, and I ran the contest, and we would have the occasional clinic. And I got to admit, having 2 guys run a state chapter is the way to do it.
Right.
because
Yeah.
there's no one to argue with. You just
No.
do it.
Yeah. Yeah. The bureaucracy really does slow things down, doesn't it?
Yeah. So we did that. And then I hosted my first big event when Bruce Daniels passed away. I did a 3-day farrier event in New Jersey in memoriam to Bruce Daniels. We raised about $10,000, which went to a scholarship program that the AFA offers, which used to be called the Bruce Daniels Scholarship Fund. Now it's the Danny Ward Scholarship Fund. Troy Price and Bob Slansky took it to the next level. The idea there is that when farrier schools see a rising star that may be struggling with a little bit of money, they can apply for a $500 gift card to the AFA, which then they can take to Anvil Brand or Stock Offs or Wellshot, and then it's a startup fund.
Oh, cool.
So
Yeah.
I did that in 2015, I believe, off the top of my head. I was busy, man. There
No
was a
kidding.
time where I was driven, Yeah, I really enjoy it. That was a cool clinic. We had Jim Quick, Bob Pethick, Lamar Weaver, Steve Krause, Pat Riley.
Oh,
It
wow.
was a big deal.
No
Yeah.
kidding.
I've been hosting events for a lot of years, and now I run the Forge of a Lifetime charity contest, which is super cool. But anyway, we're getting off topic.
It's all on topic. It's your story. So when you went for your AW,
Mm-hmm.
how did you, after getting your forging endorsement, there's also, of course, all the book work and everything else involved. Did you
Yeah.
have anybody kind of mentor you through that, or did you do that on your own?
So a lot of that I did on my own. Mitch Taylor was very instrumental in what I'll call our graduating class because he had just passed his AW the year before. He was fresh out of the test, and he offered 2 weekend-long clinics just with him,
Oh,
which
okay.
is really great when you have 10 or 12 journeymen in one room without any students and any distractions. You can talk like big boys and girls. You can have more in-depth conversations without having to have the side clinic or the side voices. So Mitch Taylor was definitely huge in the anatomy aspect because, Mitch is the anatomy man.
Right.
But one of the things that I had learned from taking my journeyman is how to study. I can't open a book and just read it and retain the information. Squirrels outside the window will always get my attention.
Right. I think that's the case for most of us. Yeah.
And I think that's why farriers do so well is that we also have some ADD. So
Right.
like you're trimming and now you're fitting and now you're shoeing and now you're nailing. So our brains are always shifting gears.
Yeah.
But when it comes to studying, man, we suck.
Yep.
What I learned to do is I would go out in the garage and I would open, whether it was Chris's book or Doug Butler's or, any textbook that I had, and I would quite literally play school. I would open a textbook and I would pace back and forth as if I was openly verbalizing to a classroom that didn't exist.
Oh, cool.
And I would read the text out loud. And when my own brain had a question, like if I was learning about bone spavin and I'm learning about jack spavin, which is one of the questions on the AFA journeyman, and then my brain would go, well, what is jack spavin? So I would ask myself out loud, what is jack spavin? Great that you asked that. Let's find out. So I would literally play school, and then whether I couldn't find the answer in a textbook, I would open my phone and I would go to Google and I would Google equine jack spavin, and then I would give this imaginary student the answer that he was looking for, which just happened to be me. So it worked out really well that I was able to pace back and forth like a teacher in front of a classroom with a textbook reading out loud, like I actually knew what I was talking about, but I didn't. I was just teaching it. And then, as you know, teaching is always the best way to learn.
Yeah.
If you can put your pride aside and close the garage door, go out in the garage and teach a class to
Yep.
yourself. And you'd be surprised at how much you can retain.
I'm just picturing your neighbors walking by and hearing
That's
you.
why the garage door was closed.
Hearing you answer your own questions.
Correct.
And would you write stuff down?
Absolutely.
Okay. Yeah. Like
Yeah.
diagrams and stuff.
Oh, yeah. So when I took my AW, my kitchen wall, I have a picture of it, looks like something from CSI where I had the strings attached,
Yep.
making the pentagram in the center. Like, that's the culprit. I hand drew every single one of Cody Gregory's hand-drawn images from
Right.
the textbook.
Yep.
And that's how I got to learn all the joints and all the joint spacings and everything up through. So my entire kitchen wall was just it was a full-scale life skeleton that I had hand-drawn. And then with each chapter, I would add a muscle.
Right.
So that's how I learned anatomy, was just by drawing it and then posting construction paper to the wall. And as I built the skeleton, I kept adding more and more papers and then pinning them to the wall. And then it was kind of a shame to tear it down, but it was time. And then as far as the definitions, they always say to do flashcards. And flashcards are really easy if you just go to the back of the glossary and copy them.
Right.
You don't have to go through the whole book and make flashcards, man. Just go to the glossary and start at A. And if you just hand write the definitions, you'll naturally pick up the information that's in those definitions.
Yes.
Just by hand writing them.
Yep. There's something about that process, right?
I made sure to commit an hour a day to reading, and I did it while I was in between horses. I actually would schedule from 12 until 1, if applicable. I would pull into a Walmart or a McDonald's, and I would force myself to read, because I knew that if I got home, the distractions of everyday life would interfere with my study time.
Right.
And I had been hand making a lot of shoes for horses. So nailing on the bar shoes and everything that was coming up as far as the shoeing application of the AW didn't frighten me. Burning up in coke frightened me. But the actual shoeing the horse, I wasn't worried about, because I was, hot shot forging endorsement, Mr. Cool Guy. But, you quickly learn how much you don't know.
Right.
When you take the AW. That was my study process, was read during the day while I was at work, and then come home and then teach imaginary school. And then when I wasn't doing that, I was sitting in the easy chair, just flipping flashcards,
Okay.
memorizing definitions, learning the Latin. Because once you learn the anatomical Latin,
Yeah.
you can start to piece the stuff together without actually knowing what it is. You
Right.
can kind of go, oh, okay, distal, dorsal, palmar, whatever. You can go, okay, my compass is pointing that direction. I'm still not sure where I'm going with it, but at least I got the right end of the horse.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
We flew in Stephen Bean for a private clinic. And Stephen had either just become an examiner or was about to become an examiner for the worshipful company. So he was really up to date with everything with the exam. So he was extremely instrumental. I'd have to say, by the time I was all done, I think I had close to $10,000 to $12,000 invested in my education, as far as textbooks, Coke, Stephen Bean Clinic, Mitch Taylor Clinic, driving to Kentucky twice, driving to Tennessee once, which from my house to Tennessee is 12 hours.
Right.
And that's where the Stephen Bean Clinic was. And that was cool. Stephen had a thing where, for the shoe display, he made sure that every one of the horseshoes that you turned in had a horse's name attached to it. So when the examiners would question you about an individual shoe, you could say, well, this particular horse had, and this is my experience with. And it really gives you a lot of leverage when you're working with the examiners, because you have experience.
Right. Yeah.
My shoe display did not have a patent bar on it because I had never applied one. So
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Stephen taught me, do not put that on there because you don't know anything about it.
Right. And then, you'll get sucked into the rabbit hole pretty quickly.
Now I think it's a requirement.
Yeah.
The test is constantly evolving. So back in my day, you didn't have to do that. 2016. Yeah.
It's so long ago.
But what was really cool about our test was, like I say, we actually had a class, and I think our class produced the highest number of graduates for the AW in American history so far.
Oh, okay.
We really worked together as a team. Mitch was really adamant about, don't give the examiners more rope than what they need, because they will hang you. They are good at it.
Yeah.
As soon as you enter into a different realm, don't give Simon Curtis leverage. He's smarter than you. So answer the question and then stare at him. Don't open your mouth again.
Yeah. Right.
Mitch was adamant about that. And it got to the point where they almost had to pry information out of us. We were like, I'm not giving you anything more than what you asked. I don't think the examiners knew what hit them when 12 of us were like, You're not getting that out of me.
All we're waiting for your lawyers to arrive.
Yeah. Everyone cracks at that test. There comes a point, because it's a grueling, it's nasty. It's the full gambit. It's very similar to the World Horseshoeing Classic, where sooner or later your weakness is going to show up.
Right.
Whether it's roadsters or tool and fuller or draft, your weakness is going to come to the top. Mine was confirmation, and I'll never forget it. Jim Ferry, who we call Scary Ferry, ice white hair, jet blue eyes. I mean, this dude just looks like an assassin. And he goes, tell me everything you know about equine conformation. What? And so I look at the horse, man, my brain just broke. And I said, oh, well, this horse is suffering from a bit of a carpal walrus. I was broken. Like that was it, man. My brain couldn't take any more. I had done an essay. I had done 3 round robins with X-rays and Simon Curtis, and I shot a horse. And I did a dead foot, and by the time that I got to Jim Ferry, my brain was mush. And he goes, "Would you care to say that again?" And I was like, "No, I don't." So I'm glad that the test is what it is, because to be perfectly honest, the examiners are really, really good. And even with that flub up with Jim Ferry, I believe that they are judging you from the moment that you arrive.
Yeah.
The way that you carry yourself, the way that you work around the horse, the way that you work under pressure, it might not be on the score sheet, but it's definitely in their score somewhere.
Right.
So I think that eventually they just realize, like, we broke them, let's just give them a C, and which I'm happy with that, because that's the highest grade I ever got.
Right.
So, and then what's crazy was, they don't tell you pass or fail that day. So you just go home. They look at you and go, all right, well, thank you very much. We'll be in touch. Now that's it. You don't know. You just don't know. So then you drive 9 hours home thinking, oh man, I said carpal walrus to Jim Ferry. Jesus Christ, you know?
That's the one thing you focus on.
The test was October. So I took 2 days off and I went bow hunting just to kind of veg in the woods with nothing. I saw on Facebook, Nikki Smith had posted that the results were out. And I had been sitting in the tree stand playing Angry Birds. I went to open my email from the WCF and it said, click results here. So I clicked and my battery died. So I was like, man, I got 4 more hours of daylight. The deer are moving. Do I climb down and find out if I pass or failed, or do I finish my hunt?
Right.
So I said, well, the results are in. There's nothing I'm going to change. So I might as well hope to shoot a deer. If nothing else, I get a deer out of the deal.
Right. Yeah.
That was how the AW went. It was, and I have to admit, it is one of the greatest tests in the world. And I think that even if you fail, just to be able to experience one of the greatest exams in the world is definitely worth the experience.
Yeah, no kidding.
Respectfully, it makes the AWCF look like a calf rope.
Yeah. It's funny because when you're going for your CF, and a lot of people have said this, you're like, okay, this is the mountain. And once I get to the top of this, I mean,
yeah, it's easy.
Yeah. But then you find out there's another mountain, and then, then another. And
Yep. And it never ends.
No.
Or it doesn't have to end. You can keep going.
Yeah.
Which is so awesome about this trade, is you can just keep going.
No kidding. Now with the handmaids, so did you mainly do handmaids leading up to that exam, or it's just like when a horse needed a therapeutic shoe, that was kind of...
No. So I wanted to be on the American Farriers team at the same time while I was going through all this. So, that was another goal. So to me, hand making shoes was just what I did. And I competed every month, all the WCBs that I could afford to go to. And I was making a lot of shoes. A lot of them were concave, but every single practice shoe that I made in the shop went on a horse that was applicable. And it's pretty cool because it's not that hard to transition into handmade shoes if you do it slowly and responsibly. I see a lot of guys that try to do it and they go, okay, Monday morning, gosh damn it, I'm going to go be a handmade shoer. And they get to the second pair and they're like, oh my God, I'm dead. Well, what you need to do, and what I did was I would pick one horse a day. And I wouldn't just say, this is the horse I'm going to do a journeyman run. I would say, okay, he needs new fronts. So I would bang out a really sweet pair of bumped up 3/4 folded front shoes that I knew were going to last for 3 or 4 resets.
Right.
That's what they're designed to do. And then I would put the keg shoes back on the hind feet. And then come back around, reset your handmaids. Now make new ones for the horse's back end. Now you have one horse in handmade shoes. You do that every day religiously. Before you know it, you're doing a heck of a lot of resets, and they're all handmade. And you're gradually transitioning all your horses into handmade shoes, which turns into a bunch of resets. You find yourself only having to make 1 or 2 pairs a day at best, because your 3/4 folders are bumped up, so they're going to last longer. So it's not hard to transition into handmaids, but it does take 2 or 3 shoeing cycles. That's the point I think a lot of guys miss, and they get frustrated. But man, the money you make, oh my God, 30 cents a horseshoe versus $7.50 for a pair of pre-clipped SX8s.
Right.
Yes, please.
Yeah. Yeah, no, this is interesting because I often ask people who even for just a period of time, did handmaids, whether or not they thought it was financially the way to do it. You're probably one of the first people to say, yes,
Yes.
that makes sense. I've often wondered, I thought that would be with just the resets alone, that's where you would make your savings.
Yeah, because no one's really charging a reset price anymore. We're all charging a pretty much
Flat
flat
rate.
rate for the services.
Yeah.
So if you only have $3 invested in steel to start, and you're good at driving nails, so you only have 18 nails per horse, the savings add up quick. And then your feet get healthier because you're not battling pre-clip shapes.
Right. Yeah.
So everything just follows suit. I was explained that, if you really want to understand how to fit pre-clipped, side-clip shoes, go out to your anvil and try to bend a piece of angle iron over the horn. You can't do it. It's structurally designed not to bend. So that hot spot right behind your pre-clip shoe will never go where you want it to go because it's structurally too strong.
Huh.
That's why everyone's always super full behind the clip or super tight under their heel, because that side clip won't bend. It's structurally impossible.
Right.
But when you start making all your own stuff, even a hand-drawn side clip, and I'm not anti-side clip, but I am anti-angle iron. Having a source removed in your side clip allows the clip to move.
Huh.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Very much so.
And then so you make these shoes that fit up nice, then they nail up nice, and before you know it, you're coming back and you're barely rasping. You can do what we call rimming, where you pop a shoe off, nip them, burn them, move on.
Right.
Because everything's healthier.
Right.
It does pay off. It takes a little bit of work, but it's definitely worth it. And I would do it all over again, but now I'm 38 with 2 kids under 5, so it's hard for me to do. But I still make a lot of concave, and I make all of my own bar shoes because I will not spend $30 for a pair of I won't. And then they don't fit and they get ripped off. No, I'll pass.
Yeah.
No, I'm good.
So what you would say is that you do sacrifice time, right? In that, yeah.
Initially, but if you judge a farrier's time by heats, by the time that I'm done reshaping an SX8, I'm 3 heats deep.
Right.
By the time that I'm done cracking out a handmade concave shoe, I'm clipping and heading to the horse on the 3rd heat.
Right.
And then I have that reset ability.
Yes.
The 2nd, 3rd shoeing job is where you make up.
Yes, exactly.
But that doesn't come without lots of practice and, hours of dedication to be able to get yourself there.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. And in the initial stages, when you were practicing for the AW and the team, I see you're really good at taking on a lot at once. It seems to be a reoccurring theme. Did you also have a lot of forge time, or you just tried to incorporate as much of it into your working day as you could?
I did both. I mean, I loved working, with the WCB, learning all the really cool trick shoes, and working in the Coke Fire was a passion because I wanted that. I wanted to be the team guy. I wanted that coat. So I just made it happen. But unfortunately, I got to be honest, my love for hunting and fishing trumped my desire for wanting to be world champion.
Right.
You can't do both because, as they say, for every minute that you're not practicing, somebody else is.
Yes. Yep.
And that's true. So my love for deer and bass, it just, it overtook my desire to want to be on the team, which is my own fault, but I guess I don't regret it too much. When you talk to team guys, they're like, yeah, it only cost me $18,000 to be on a team last year. I'm like, oh, wow. That's terrible.
Well, and you hear a lot of people where it also costs them their
Cost their marriage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or their family, or yeah.
There's always that guy that was gonna be a shooting star, and then he had a family, so then you don't see him anymore. And those are just priorities. And really, I mean, how bad do you want it, and what do you want to sacrifice to get it?
Yeah. Yep. And I'm sure some people who've reached those heights have also thought, oh man, I did sacrifice maybe a bit too much.
Yeah. Years ago, when I finally learned how to trim, I flew down to Texas to work with Todd Walker, who's the nicest guy in the world. And Todd lives in this hard, dry Austin, like rattlesnake country. Like, he warned me, like, look, if you go outside to pee, check for snakes. I'm like, gee. I'm from Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
Nothing tries to kill us in Pennsylvania.
No.
When I flew down there, you couldn't cut through Texas feet. My freshly sharpened razor blade from East Coast just curled backwards my first time that I even tried to trim a foot. And Todd's like, yeah, leave it alone. And then we flew south to work with Billy Reed, who was also on the team, and he lives in the swamp. So I'm like, oh, cool. I'm going to show these boys my knife skills. I'm going to, and Billy's like, nah, leave that in there, dude. That's good stuff. So that's when I learned, man, I got 2 team guys telling me, put the knife away. So that was kind of the beginning of me, shoeing horses better. But I made a joke because we were cold banging on a pair of St. Croix aluminum eventers. And I said, man, here I am in a Texas farm with 2 of the world's greatest farriers, and I'm banging on a pair of aluminum eventers. And they went, what's that tell you about all of your hard work for competing? And I was like, oh, you just popped my balloon, dude. And then stomped on it and then threw it in the trash, So there definitely is something to be said about the sacrifice and whether or not it's worth it, and whether or not, I believe competition is a huge facet in something in a farrier's career. I believe that you should do it. Whether you should aspire for the team, that's up to you. But unless you're willing to really stick your head in the noose and be judged by peers, you don't know anything. You're just out there being a professional in your own mind. But until you are scored by your peers, that's when the learning starts.
Yeah, there's something really humbling about that, isn't there?
Yeah.
Now, do you think your military background played a lot into your regimen to study and practice and everything else?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Doubtful any of my old sergeants will ever listen to this, but I owe a lot to them for instilling that, into me. It's kind of funny. I was listening to Travis Burns' episode, and him and I parallel a lot. And I also had a single mom and zero structure in our life. And that's why I was able to go be an apprentice, because my mom had no idea where I was. Dad wasn't in the picture. So it wasn't until I got in the military that I was able to have some structure in my life. And that's when they were able to take the energy and really point it in a direction.
Right.
Even when I was in the military, I was quite the Boy Scout. I mean, I was always chasing the next ribbon, chasing the next school. I was always looking for the next thing, because I don't know whether I had this feeling of inferiority because I had a single mom and we were poor as hell and just a bad so I was always pushing to be better. But I think the combination between growing up super dirt poor, I'm talking like when you give cans at Christmas time, they went to us, so we really appreciate that. So I think that had a lot to do with it. When I finally had some structure where they could point this anger and this angst in a certain direction, it really changed my life and put me on a better course.
No kidding.
And my clients didn't know what to do, because in the military, if you're on time, you're late because you're supposed to be there 10 minutes early.
Right.
And everything. So I would come rolling into the barn at 8:50 for a 9 o'clock appointment.
Yeah.
And I'd be like, why are the horses out? Go get the goddamn horse. 8:50, 9 o'clock, hoof in the air. And I meant it. 9 a.m. hoof in the air. That wasn't a joke.
Yeah.
And it took a while for my area to be like, God, this kid is nuts.
Yeah, not your typical farrier.
Well, and that was, I think, what really helped me, because I wasn't always the most agreeable person to get along with, because I was so driven. I was so hardcore at what I was doing that I was very, very intense at the barn. I was here to shoe your horse. I'm not here to be your friend. And if it wouldn't be for me showing up every single time on time, no matter what, come hell or high water, I'm going to be there. I don't think that I would have the client base that I have, because my attitude certainly did not warrant having clients, but my reliability and as my skills progressed warranted. So my clients just learned to deal with
Now,
me.
do you think you became more personable as time went on?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, especially having kids. Kids will soften you. You quickly learn what's important and what's not. Right now, I think my daughter's hanging from the ceiling fan. Whatever. She'll be all right. The cat's watching her.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's good. Yeah.
And to be honest, and I mean, we're laughing a good bit, but I always try to keep customers laughing. That's something I've learned.
Oh, yeah, that's a big part of it. Yep.
Like, I don't warn new clients that I'm about to hot fit their horse for the first time. And I certainly don't go in there with a piece of hoof and burn it in front of the horse's nose. And I just keep people laughing. And before you know it, they're like, oh, crap, there's smoke in my barn.
Right. Yeah, yeah.
But as long as the person's laughing, there definitely is an energy transfer from that rope to the horse's brain. And if the person at the end of the rope is nervous, that energy transfers through that lead rope into that horse. I believe that with all my heart. So
Yep. No,
if I
would
can
agree.
keep people calm and laughing, then the horse is like, okay, cool. Mom's okay. I guess I'm okay too.
I'll be all right with this dude.
Yeah.
Doing crazy things to my feet.
Right.
Yeah.
And I tell you, hand making shoes, believe it or not, makes the horses more comfortable around you. Because I found that even today, when I cold shoe a horse with a stall jack, When you're under them that much, picking foot up, putting foot down, picking foot up, putting foot down, or just shaping shoes bent over, the horses don't like it. I learned quickly, get in, trim, measure, go back to your truck, let the horse fall asleep in the cross ties, come back in with, and fit him up, go back to your truck, leave him alone. And before you know it, you're an hour and a half into the job and you've only been under the horse for 20 minutes.
Right. Yeah.
As opposed to when I cold shoe a horse, I'm still an hour and a half into the job, but I've been bugging the horse the whole time. So that's something that I learned from hand making is that, there is something to be said about leaving the horse alone. Let him be a horse and life will go a lot easier for you.
Right. Except you do get those occasional ones who, when they're out there in the cross ties or the cross ties are in a terrible spot.
Yep.
And yeah, those are always the ones that, the weld doesn't stick on your bar
Every
shoe
time.
or yeah.
I nail it on anyway. Fill it with dirt, it'll be all right. The horse doesn't know. I got to go to England for the AW graduation. And it was super cool because it happened over New Year's Eve. So my wife and I got to be at Big Ben for the fireworks and the whole deal.
Cool. Yeah.
So we had this amazing trip, but I got to go intern with a guy. Now over there, you're not legally allowed to drive nails.
Right.
So I wasn't allowed to do anything. I just watched, but I'm not saying I didn't help, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I certainly didn't do anything that was illegal or would jeopardize the farrier's career.
Right. Yeah, yeah.
But what was interesting was I didn't work on a single cross-tied horse over there. Everything was tied to the wall.
Really?
And it wasn't until because the guy I worked with had 3 apprentices. So he had what he called a wrencher and clencher. And then he had a nailing apprentice. And then himself was the master. He trimmed and shaped and burned. But then his one apprentice pulled. The other apprentice nailed. The first apprentice clinched. It was a beautiful system. So they were able to knock out 30 horses. Plus add me, where I was clinching and just, pulling and just kind of doing stuff. I wasn't doing anything illegal, but I was doing stuff.
Yeah.
Dude, we knocked out like 30 horses in a day.
Holy jeez.
And it wasn't until like horse number 22, I went, not one horse broke cross ties. How is that statistically possible?
Yep.
And I went, oh yeah, there's no stupid cross ties. Only in the Western Hemisphere do we think that it's okay to put a horse that has tunnel vision eyeballs and, binocular vision in a long tunnel tied in the middle with 2 5-foot long ropes and think he's going to be okay with this. You watch every single European warm blood and they find the nearest wall. They find the nearest tack box. They just naturally gravitate. And what do? We push him off of it. Get off the tack box, you big son of a buck. And then you wonder why he goes flying backwards and breaks cross ties. Well, because you took away his ability to watch both ends of the aisle at the same time for predators.
Right. Yeah.
They're prey animals. Why would we think that we can put this animal in the middle of a long tunnel and he's going to be okay with it?
Yeah.
That's what we do in Canada and America. I guess you guys do it too, but in America,
we do.
Man, cross ties are life. You just learn to deal with it.
Have you ever experimented with that at home? Like just tying one that's typically bad at breaking cross ties, just tie it to a wall?
No, I actually don't own a horse. So, and haven't for 19 plus years. Truth be told, I have not been in a saddle for 21 years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So, no, normally if they're just that bad, if I have a couple where I'm in a situation where maybe I'm working alone and then the groom is down at the end of the aisle cleaning stalls and I'm all alone, it's kind of funny. Park a wheelbarrow behind them.
Oh, yeah?
One of 2 things will happen. They'll either blow through the wheelbarrow and it'll be a great, great big dramatic train wreck, or they'll just go, oh, I can't go any further.
Right. Yeah, yeah.
Pick your poison. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But sometimes if you just put something behind them, they'll go, okay, you win.
Right.
Normally, if they're that bad in cross ties, I require someone to hold them. That's just common sense.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm not trying to do smoke and mirrors on a dumb horse.
Yeah.
Because he's reacting. There's nothing you can do about it. That's my take on cross ties. They're bad.
That's interesting. It makes a lot of sense when you put it that way. Yeah, I never would have known that. That's how they do it in England. I'm going to start paying more attention to Simon Curtis videos.
What they did when I was with them was they would do near side, offside. So they would put a front left and then a left hind in the forge. And then they would work on the horse on the near side and do that side of the horse. And then they would turn him 180. And then he was still up against the wall. And then they would just do it. It's the same as we do in pairs, just they do front back.
Right.
Or that particular farrier did. And it was a great system.
No kidding. Cool. Is the FW on your radar, or?
It is. I have a couple of things I'm looking at for the dissertation. That's what scares everybody, is the big. Respectfully, I'm not going to tell you any of my ideas because
Yeah,
I
of
don't want
course.
anybody
Yeah,
to
yeah.
steal, because that's the whole point of the game. It's definitely on my radar. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through the proper chain of command, and I'm going to utilize the AFA, and I might attempt my educator endorsement first,
Good for you. Yeah.
which is a stepping stone into the FW. So I'm going to do, rather than going to England and hanging myself, I'm going to take the necessary steps to prepare myself, which is the beautiful thing about the AFA is that they do work so closely with the WCF, which is arguably the greatest ferry organization in the world.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't you use an AFA stepping stone?
Yeah.
You'd be foolish not to.
That makes sense.
That's what I'm looking at. But right now I have so much going on with the charity contest that I don't know, man. There's,
All in due time.
yeah.
Yeah.
I would love to shamelessly plug my contest.
Yeah, of course.
Started. It's a charity, so I feel like I have to. It's called Forge of a Lifetime. I ripped off from an organization called Hunt of a Lifetime, which is what they do is that they operate similar to the Make-A-Wish Foundation, but they take kids that are going through a rough time. They take their families and the kid on hunting and fishing trips. Make-A-Wish is kind of funny about the idea of a young kid with leukemia killing a moose.
Right. Yeah.
They don't like that image.
Right.
So there's a thing called Hunt of a Lifetime that they're like, hey, we'll go kill a moose. If that's what this kid's final wish is, we're going to make it happen.
Yeah.
One night, me and Jameson Whiskey had this idea that while everything else was shut down with COVID, that I was going to host my own private competition. Since I had all the experience through the PPFA running contests for years, it wasn't a daunting task. I had it at a private farm, and this is during COVID lockdown, and nothing was happening. I could feel the Facebook pulse that everyone was kind of cabin fevery, and they were looking for something. And I created a Facebook page and said, look, if I build this, will you come?
Yeah.
And then a couple guys were like, look, man, if you do this, are you going to cancel? And I was like, I ain't canceling. I said, I'll run this thing like a rave where if you show up, I'll give you directions to the next part, or you pick up directions to the next part. And we're going to outsmart the government, and we're going to have a contest. This is going to happen. The first year we had 30 competitors come out, and it's all forging. Wow. So there's no horses. So you don't have to bring out your shoeing rig. Just bring your anvil and your tool bag, and it operates very similar to the WCB, except you have to bring your anvil and your forge, your vise. But there's no horses to worry about, which is nice. The first year we raised $17,000 for the charity.
Cool.
In entry fees, and then all of that money, I kept a little bit back so I could keep going. But then we sent Hunt of a Lifetime $5,000 to be able to use to help sick kids go on hunting and fishing trips with their families. This year, we raised $22,000. We had 35 competitors come out. We're doing it again. Next year, we're doing it again in March. It'll be the third weekend in March. This is the first time debuting this. I just signed a contract with Nashville recording artist Ray Scott, who was big in the early 2000s.
Yeah.
He's going to be playing a live show at our contest next year.
Oh, amazing.
So I'm not stopping. The owner of the property he's super motivated, and he has my back. And this is something that, I really, this is my first time saying this on public, as I really think that this is God's calling, because this past contest, we were faced with some really, really nasty storms, and I can't make this up. The storms came in and they hit the edge of the property, and I'm watching my circus tents blow up like balloons. Like, oh man,
here we
got forges, and I'm not lying. The storm hit us. It made a right. It paralleled us. It made a hard left, and then it shot a perfect double rainbow over the farm. No one got wet.
No way.
So if that's not a sign from God that maybe we're onto something, we're going to keep on doing it. I told my wife, she can't believe I signed a country music artist to a farrier contest. And I told her that I'm going to run until the chain snaps tight.
Yep.
And then I'm going to stand at the end of the chain. So that's what we're doing for Forge of a Lifetime farrier contest. So hopefully, you get to come on down and hang out with us. I'll fly you in.
Awesome. When is that?
That's the third weekend in March.
Okay.
Yeah. And Joe Nygren is judging.
Awesome.
So I can't think of a better, more solid guy than Joe. So
yeah.
Honored to have him.
No, that sounds like a good time.
Yeah, man. So that's my shameless plug for the contest, and I'm very, very proud of.
Well, I'm glad you were able to share it. That's awesome. This portion of the podcast is called the Stratum Tectorium. These are the short answer, surface stuff questions, but it's okay if the guest wants to go deeper. Enjoy. What's your favorite book?
My favorite book, it is, I haven't read it in a lot of time, but it is Where the Red Fern Grows.
Okay. What's that about?
It's about this poor country boy that raised money selling fishing worms so he could buy 2 red-boned coon dogs because he wanted to learn how to coon hunt, but he knew that he needed coon dogs. There's this legend in the Ozark Mountains where these 2 Native Americans, a boy and a girl, they had fallen in love and then they died in a winter storm. And this mystical red fern grew up between the 2 frozen bodies. And that indicated where these 2. And then the story goes on, the dogs get encountered with a cougar during a coon hunt, and the cougar takes out both of the dogs. One dies immediately, and then one dies like 2 weeks later from injuries. And then at the end of the story, you go out, and the little boy goes out to the grave, and there's a red fern growing between the 2 graves of his beloved coon dogs.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I read that in like 4th grade, and I still choke up talking about it.
No kidding.
It's very comparable to Old Yeller.
Right.
So that's probably my favorite book.
Okay, cool. Favorite brand of nails?
Recently, the Liberty hybrids.
Yep.
You can order them non-copper. If you don't like the copper color, you can order straight steel hybrids.
Yeah. Yep. I've seen them.
Which is great. And I normally buy nails by the case because you end up getting 1 box for free.
Right.
Or as far as your savings.
What shoe sizes do you generally stock the most of, or dimensions like lengths?
Ones. I do a lot of 1s and 2s.
Okay.
Thoroughbred feet.
Yep. So yeah, you do still deal with a lot of thoroughbreds then?
Yes, especially in my area because we are in the middle of a triangle of 3 racetracks. For what used to be. So there's a lot.
Do you still work on any track horses, or it's just like when they're off the track and
No, everything's off
pleasure?
the track.
Okay.
Yeah, everything's
gotcha.
off the track.
What's your favorite make of rasp?
Oh, the Heller Blue Tang.
Oh, you're switching it up. Everybody says the green tang.
The green's clog.
Yeah, that's what I was finding too.
I just can't tolerate it. And rasps are cut to run a certain direction. So if you teach yourself to start at one side of the foot and work your way to the other and not back and forth, you can actually produce a nice finish. Even with something like a Balata Top Sharp, which is notorious for being aggressive, if you just go from the left side of the foot around to the right side of the foot, you can produce a nice finish.
Yep.
That's just my take on rasps. I just like that they're wide and they level out nice.
How about what's your dream farrier rig?
Oh man, that depends on the day of the week.
And the weather?
Some days I wish I had like a push button, something with airbags and everything lowered down to like my waist height and didn't have to fight with anything. And then other days I wish I just had a forge and a bucket of horseshoes, and so it depends on the day.
That's a great answer.
I've never owned a nice rig. I have a tub, but I'm the 3rd owner.
Okay.
So I just rock on with that. It's not great, but it gets it done.
Yep. How about your favorite rounding hammer?
I used 2 during the competition. I have a Todd Walker hammer when he was making tools about 5, 6 years ago. He made this sweet little 2-pounder with like a real little face. You get a lot done with a 2-pound hammer, like accurately. And then I follow that up with a big wide face hammer made by my buddy Tyler Galladay. He owns Super T Forge.
Okay.
Kind of a young hammer maker. So I use Todd Walker hammer to get the work done. And then I use my Super T to come in and flatten it out nicely.
Yeah, cool.
Those are my babies.
Your favorite type of bar stock to work with?
3 8/3 concave all day long.
Okay.
Yeah, but because of the thoroughbreds, like even 3 7/8 concave.
Yep.
And then bar shoes, I make them all out of bolt stock now.
Do you? Yep.
Yeah, it's so fast.
Yeah, I saw some pictures of some nice bold stock bar shoes the other day. I've never worked with it, but I'd like to give it a try.
It's definitely different. It doesn't measure the same as concave, so you have to go back to the drawing board.
Oh, really?
It kind of stretches more. It's weird.
Oh, really? Okay.
At least for me, it does.
What's the next thing on your bucket list?
Possibly the EE. My 5-year plan, I would like to cut back to 4 days a week, and I would like to become a guide on our local Susquehanna River. which is the #1 smallmouth bass fishery in the world.
Oh, cool.
It's only about 3 feet deep on a good day. And there's lots of rocks. So you have to have a special boat, and which I have. So I'm hoping to one day be a guide 1 day a week out there.
Cool.
So that's my long-term dream is to fish for a day.
Pursuing your passion and get paid for it.
Exactly.
So this might already have been answered. What's your favorite pastime after work?
Yeah, definitely hunting and fishing.
Yeah, I figured you'd say that.
Yeah.
Favorite brand of keg shoe?
Man, you know what? If Kirkhart and St. Croix could come together, I wish Coke and Pepsi could come together. I think that we could really have something. St. Croix has great designs in their horseshoes,
Yeah.
but you can't nail them on because you can't lean the nail over more than 3 degrees.
Yeah.
And then Kirkhart has great nail ability, but their shoes don't last because the toes are weak. So it's
You want them to make a baby.
yeah,
Baby shoe.
exactly. Yeah, it'd be nice. You can't get Libros in America because nobody really wants them because everyone thinks that they're too heavy. I have pleaded with Mustad to bring Mustad makes an amazing concave Libro, and they act like they can't bring it over here because no one will buy it.
Oh.
I'm like, I'll order a pallet,
Yeah.
Let's do this.
Send it my way, yeah.
Yeah.
What's your ideal number of horses to shoe all around in one day?
Probably 4 or 5, Well, that depends. Like 5 at one stop and I'm done.
Yeah.
I can do 7 or 8. I need a half hour to drive and just, chill out for a second.
Yep. Get that break physically and mentally.
Yeah. And I can only be charming for so long before I say something dumb to a client.
What's your favorite amble?
Oh, Scott, hands down.
All right. Favorite inspirational quote?
Oh, I love the smell of napalm in the morning. Smells like victory.
Yeah. Do you have a farrier terrier? I didn't see one or hear one while we were getting set up.
I don't know if I call it rescued. I acquired a healer.
Oh, okay.
She's my 3rd one, and I acquired it from an owner who has 2 healers. And I hope the guy she doesn't listen to this because her healer tried to bite me while I was at the drill press, and I got ahead of the dog and I booted her in the nose gently just to make sure that she knew, I see you coming.
Yeah.
And now me and this dog are best buddies. So because that's what healers need, a certain leader in their life.
Right. Yeah.
So my client told the one small animal vet, hey, I've got this farrier that's really good with healers. I don't know what he did, but he loves Reddy now. So I acquired Sadie with a fractured femur. She had her femur was totally fractured, and I acquired her. She was supposed to be a truck dog, but she actually bites horses.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, so she didn't make it. She was great. The one day the one horse would not go back in the stall. It was being an absolute ass. And I just went, let's go. And this little gray flurry shot out of nowhere and bit this paint horse on the fetlock. And it was like, Dad said go.
Oh, dear.
And we all stared at each other like, are we cool with this? Like, the horse is in the stall. Like, I got what you wanted. And so I just never took her along again. But
right. Yeah.
She always had my back.
No kidding.
But no, to be honest, it is a huge liability. And I think it's very irresponsible when farriers do bring their dog to a farm.
Okay.
That's honest to God I think it's wrong to do that.
Okay. My dog does come along, and he's probably more of a facet of my business than I am, but I see your point.
There's also that too, where people welcome the dog, but Sadie she's my dog, and that's just how it's going to be.
Right.
And it was crazy, man. I would tie her to one of the cross ties, and you could see her like judging each horse. As the horses would go by, she'd be like, no, you. And she would fly out and bite one. And it was great because the green were like, yeah, I hate that horse too. And I'm like, so somehow Sadie just knew which ones needed bitten.
Feeding off of you. Yeah.
But I just couldn't handle the liability with her.
No, that'd be a little, playing the odds. That's not going to go well at some point.
Yeah, but she's all right.
If you're stumped on a case or need backup, do you have somebody you call?
Oh, not so much anymore. Not to sound pompous. I was lucky that I was told that once you're in this job for 10 plus years, nothing should really scare you.
Yeah.
You should have enough experience where you should be able to roll up in there and not be worried. I used to be able to reach out to one of my buddy's ex-wives. She was a vet. And so before working with the veterinarian, because my love for veterinarians is very, very low, what I would do is I would call her the night before and go, "Hey, I have this case and I got to work with the vet tomorrow. What can I expect this veterinarian to say?" And then she would give me the whole rundown. So then when I would get to the barn, I would walk in like, "Yeah, well, I guess we're gonna go ahead and ease the brake over. And I'm gonna put a wedge on them heels, and I think we're gonna be okay, doctor. You can leave." which didn't go well.
No.
But she was great, and it was kind of funny because I had to work on a baby that had the double flexural deformity,
Oh, yeah.
the praying mantis thing.
Yep.
I had never encountered this, so I call her up and I'm like, "Doc, I need legit vet support." So she talked me through it the night before, and I was able to make some leg braces, and I show up looking like hot shit because I'm basically looking into a crystal ball to see what the vet's going to say 12 hours from now,
Right. Yeah.
which is really powerful to be able to do that. But unfortunately to me, the owner posted me and the veterinarian and the foal working all together on Facebook. Like, "Great farrier team, Chris and Jen, super team." Well, turns out Jen, the vet that I work with now, and the vet that I used to bounce information off of were classmates. They were lab
Oh, no
partners.
way.
So now my gig is up. I don't have this crystal ball anymore.
Oh, no.
It actually worked out really well because then this vet was able to kind of do her own background check on me.
Right. Yeah.
So that worked, and that really softened my tone towards vets. But I'm still not super vet friendly when it comes to the farrier practice. I should be, but I'm not.
All just because of that one that wasn't nice to you when you were.
When I was 13 years old, he told me I didn't know what I was doing, and it stuck with me. Honestly, I think what it is, and it's not the vet's fault, is that when you achieve a certain level of education, whether it's CF or journeyman or whatever, you don't want to be told, "Ease the brake over, and can we put more heel on this horse?"
Yeah.
Sooner or later, that cliche answer wears thin.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm a common denominator guy. And when you take all the lamenesses in the world and you take all the vet scripts in the world, and it's always the same script, you kind of start to see through it. Like, "All right, doc, easing the brake over and supporting the heels, we can stop on this. Let's do something else."
Yeah. Yeah.
But I have softened my tone over the years. But it took me a lot of time where I had such a bad rep with veterinarians that I had to work extra hard to keep the horses sound because they didn't want to work with me and I didn't want to work with them. And I drew a hard line in the sand where, screw that vet, I'm going to do this myself. And I think it helped me. It hurt me, but now that I'm softening my tone on the vets, it's helped because I have all of these years of not working with them where they can kind of go, "He's flying rogue, but I don't have many veterinarians taking radiographs of my horses."
Right.
And
Yeah.
I'm not saying that to be cocky. I'm saying that because I learned the hard way how to avoid that.
Mm-hmm.
I still shoot horses like it's 1890, not 2020. I try to shoot horses like it's pre-radiograph and pre-ultrasound and pre-stall
Mm-hmm.
rest.
Right.
And I think that a talented farrier can prevent the veterinarian from getting into your life. If you don't want the vet to tell you what to do a better job so that the vet never gets called. We should end there.
Sage advice. Yeah. Before we go down the rabbit hole. No,
Yeah.
that's an interesting take on it. Yeah.
And I'm not impervious to lame horses, obviously not.
Yeah. None of us are. Yeah.
That's like the age-old question. If a vet wants you to do a certain thing and you just disagree with it, what do you do?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And I truly believe in my heart that if you are an accomplished farrier and you know in your heart from years of experience that what the veterinarian is prescribing, even though it may not be damaging, it might not help. If you apply it, you are intentionally setting the horse back 6 to 8 weeks.
Right.
So if you know in your heart that a leather pad and a straight bar is going to do much better than an aluminum wedge with Equipack, then as the farrier, you need to do that.
Right.
You shouldn't just appease the veterinarian because it ain't going to hurt nothing. And then in 6 weeks, I'll do it my way. That's the wrong answer.
Huh.
That's my opinion. But
It's funny because I work closely with a lot of vets around here, and we've built this kind of mutual respect, and it's great because I don't think I mean, except for a few exceptions where they don't work with you, I haven't ever had to do that situation
Sure.
with them. But yeah, we all come from a different area and dealing with different personalities. It's always a
yeah,
fun time navigating those waters.
I have actually had a vet in front of the client say, it's my prescription, it's the final word, do it or don't.
Yep.
And I was like, okay, I won't. And then that puts the client in a bind,
Yep.
you know.
Oh yeah.
But you know what? They're still a client and they've switched vets, you know, but that could have gone dangerously bad too.
Yeah, it could have gone either way. Yeah, I actually handed a vet my tools one time. He wanted the toes dubbed and I was not going to do it. So that horse was lame for 2 weeks.
No, you know, but what you know what's neat is I just talked to a vet 2 weeks ago, and she expressed to me her frustration with horse owners having access to things like PEMF therapy,
Yeah.
and you know, stuff that should be under a vet's control. And she even, you know, said like the vet community has, not exclusively, but they've already written off PEMF therapy. They tried to sell it to the vets wrote it off, and now the owners have it.
Right.
And I said, boy, that's so funny, because a lot of the farriers that you guys listen to at your CE clinics, farriers have already written those guys off. And now they're talking to you. And she went, really? I said, yeah, why do you think they're talking to vets and not farriers? Because we've already said that we're done with you. So that was a really cool team building exercise between me and the doctor to understand that we do have equal frustrations. It's just different.
Yep. Yeah.
But any of the vets that listen to this, I do love you, even if you frustrate me.
Okay. Well, with all that said, do you have a favorite shoe or package for a mystery lameness when the client won't get a diagnosis done? Or
The first thing that I always start with is something similar to a side bone shoe. If I'm not going to put on a straight bar, you know, pad's always number one because that's simple. Leather pad, and I like Oakham for packing.
okay.
The old fashioned Oakham
Yep.
rope. If that doesn't work, even in that initial shot, I will put lateral mechanical breakover into a shoe, because horses naturally want to break over their lateral toe quarter. It's how their extensor tendons run down the leg. It makes them pull to the outside.
Yeah.
So the more that you can encourage that outside toe breakover, I think the less you're in the horse's way.
Right.
And I've been nailing on a lot of like classic rollers and SEC rollers, because that's just the mechanics already built into the shoe. But if I'm going to reach for a magic horseshoe, it's usually a straight bar with some sort of a lateral breakover. And I'll even rocker lateral.
Right.
Just to help them move that way. So that's normally number one. And I don't normally have to move past number one or number two.
Gotcha.
It's a bar shoe with a pad or something similar, and that normally helps.
Yeah.
Just get them out of their own way.
Yep. You're not the first person to say that.
And then hind end lameness, man, fit the foot and put that lateral quarter out there where it belongs. And that's going to save a lot of your stifle and back and hock pain.
Mm-hmm.
But we're learning that more and more. Squaring off hind toes is kind of getting phased out.
Yeah, I see that too.
You know?
Yeah. What do you use as your planner?
Oh, pen and paper.
Okay. Yep.
Yeah. Ink always trumps iPhone. I get one text a month. Hey, I deleted my calendar. When are you coming? I'm like, oh.
Oh, right.
Or I get the occasional, where are you? I'm like, oh, I'll be there tomorrow. You put it in your phone wrong.
Right. What's your favorite method for soothing aches and pains?
Hot tub. I would like to thank President Biden for his stimulus money. I bought a hot tub. Yeah, definitely hot tub. Not so much alcohol. That's more for mental aches and pains. I hear a lot of guys talking about drinking away their pain, and no, that's more mental for me. And definitely massage helps a lot. You know, you have to take care of yourself.
That sounds like my regimen too, actually. Hot tub and massage. What is your favorite drink?
Oh, Jameson, hands down.
Okay, well, it sounds like he's your consult for good ideas. So,
you know, I actually reached out to them for a sponsorship, and they said that they're full. But I'm gonna keep, I'm gonna keep poking them, because it'd be cool to have. It's like, you don't know how many good ideas I've gotten through you guys.
Persistence pays off. Don't give up on that dream. What's your favorite genre of music?
I'm pretty much anything. My one helper never knows what we're going to hear, but definitely country music. I just got to see Gary Allen on Friday. That was a great show. And like I say, I'm booking another guy, Ray Scott. So anything kind of off the beaten path. I don't like outlaw music, because I think that most of those outlaw singers aren't that good. But there's kind of a middle ground between not mainstream, but not quite outlaw.
Okay. Do you work out?
I do. When I found out that I had to backpack in Colorado for 15 days, I realized that I better get in shape.
And then you stuck with it.
Yeah, yeah, and I got to admit, I was at the point in my career where I was wearing suspenders on my shoeing apron because my lower back and my core had gotten so weak that the belt from my apron hurt my lower back and gave me pain.
Right.
So by redeveloping my, I lost almost 30 pounds. I call it baby weight. My wife says I was fat. Yeah, there's definitely something to be said. Even if you just do core workout, there's an exercise for like $70. You can buy a bench from Amazon where you do reverse sit-ups,
Yep.
where you lean forward and then you pick your torso backwards. Well, that's a muscle that farriers never, ever, ever use because we're always bent over forward. So that muscle becomes extremely weak. So if you can strengthen that guy, a lot of your back pain will go away.
Huh. Okay.
Reverse sit-ups.
Cool. What would you been if not a farrier?
Oh, I don't even know. I probably would have stayed career military.
Okay.
I was almost trapped in the military. My commander wanted me to reenlist, and we were playing this game where if I reenlisted, they were going to give me $5,000 for a bonus. But if I was a sergeant, they would have given me $10,000 for a bonus. So my captain said, reenlist and I'll promote you. And I said, well, if you're already going to promote me now, and then I'll reenlist tomorrow.
Right.
And that's when the government was like, well, we're not real sure. So I cut this deal and I said, look, sir, I said, I'm going to go shoe horses. And he goes, if I can find you a job shooting horses in the Army, will you stay in? And I was like, yeah, that'd be cool. And I almost got a gig working on the caisson horses in Washington, D.C.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, that's the truth. But the man that had it, I think his first name was Ray. He was still there. And it is a civilian contract job, or at least that's what they told me. So I was almost trapped in the military as a farrier. And I'm glad that didn't happen.
Yeah. No kidding.
But I don't know what I would be, honest to God. It's hard to say. I'm just a horseshoer.
Yeah. Through and through. And the final question, the COVID question, who would you want to be stuck in a shop with for a month during a month lockdown?
Oh man, who could tolerate me for a month is really the question. You know what? Honestly, probably Travis Burns.
Yeah.
Because he's just so easy to talk to and he's so knowledgeable and he tolerates me on a different level. I think other guys do.
Yeah.
I'm funny, but trust me, it wears thin after a couple hours.
So a month might get into trouble.
Mm-hmm. It's like, stop telling jokes. I'm like, I can't help it.
Well, we're very similar in that vein.
It's my coping mechanism,
Yep. Same here.
And, not having a clear defined goal. I think if I was shooting for the team, my answer would be different. Or if I knew that I was going FW, my answer would be different.
Right.
So
Yeah.
I think it would be goal related.
Okay. Yep. That makes sense.
When goals come down the timeline, I will make an attempt to make sure that I do work with whoever that individual is going to be.
Cool. Well, thanks, man. That was great. Please thank your wife for me.
Without her, there's nothing on this list that would have been accomplished. I wrote down all of my accomplishments and it fit on a note card. So it must not be that much, but without her, there's absolutely no way that any of this would have been possible.
Yeah. Well, that's amazing. Yep.
I really appreciate the honor, man. Thank you very, very much.
Oh, well, I appreciate having you.